What is going on, Tentacrum? My name is Billy the Squid. Today we are getting our first major patch for Elden Ring. This is the first patch that's going to bring some big balancing changes, as well as hopefully updating the stability of the game, specifically on PC, but on all consoles. So let's dive into it. This is patch V1.03. Let's check it out. So the patch is coming to all platforms, as we can see here. And they're actually apologizing for the inconvenience of the patch. They do say this is going to be gameplay stability and balance, so there's going to be some spicy stuff in here. I'm excited to see what all they have going on. So this is actually something really interesting right at the start of the patch. They are adding a function to the game that's going to make NPCs have markers on the map so that you can keep track of them a little bit easier. That is convenient and nifty. Added a new NPC, new quest phases for these following NPCs, more summonable NPCs, so I'm guessing they're going to be sending these guys outside of more boss situations and stuff like that. That way you can have a little bit more fun with the NPCs. They updated the Mimic's Veil to have more items that you can like turn yourself into, so that's pretty nifty as well. And added background music for some open field areas. I don't know why, but I like this. I like this a lot. This is stuff that they definitely didn't need to add, and the fact that they're adding it in now, I think that's pretty neat. I don't know why they're adding in new quest lines. I don't know if they just weren't like fleshed out when the game released, but hey, pretty good, especially if you like the NPCs. Bug fixes, moving on down the line. So there are a bunch of really quality bug fixes in here, but the ones that I want to bring up that are more prevalent than others, and some of the more high-profile ones than others, is fix a bug that causes arcane to scale incorrectly for some weapons. This is directly tied to the Rivers of Blood katana. You could level up arcane all day on that, and it wasn't increasing the damage properly. It was just increasing how quickly you could bleed people out. Now, that katana, and I'm sure there are other weapons in the arcane scaling area, they're all going to scale properly, their base damage as well as bleed buildup if they have that. In situations where the player cannot obtain more than 2 talisman pouches, added a talisman pouch to the Twin Maiden Husks shop lineup. So if you went so far into the game without picking up the second talisman pouch, you get 1 from beating Margit the Fell, and then 1 from beating a demigod after you beat Godric, so Godric plus 1 other demigod. You would get a second talisman pouch. But I don't know how far you had to get into the game. It would actually lock you out of getting that talisman pouch. They fixed that now. You're always going to be able to get the maximum amount of talisman pouches. Very good. This one's one that's going to have some people grumpy. Fixed a bug that allowed players to activate Erd Tree Great Shield's weapon skill without absorbing an attack using a special combination of items or incantations. So with this one, you could poison yourself or use a spell that would light yourself on fire, Fire's Deadly Sin, and just hold the Erd Tree Great Shield up and it would just Gatling gun spells out of it, and there's nothing a lot of people could do about it. And it was very, very effective in PvE. They have reduced that effectiveness and now only reflects spells back after they hit the shield and go forward. So you actually have to block spells to get the effect of the shield. And speaking of Fire's Deadly Sin, they have fixed the exploit where Fire's Deadly Sin was making the Deathblight proc just by it doing its Fire Deadly Sin thing. So there won't be any more Deathblight rollers rolling around, hopefully, in PvP. And this is the first one that directly affects the speedrunning community. Ash of War Determination and Royal Knight's Resolve, where the damage buff will also apply to other weapons without that skill. This was a big thing that the speedrun community was using to power down bosses, and it's taking a hit. Now it only affects the weapon that actually has the Ash of War attached to it, nothing else. The rest of the bug fixes are very good, but they're more minor in nature, so feel free to read through these. The patch notes will be down below. Also, while you're down below, maybe subscribe to the channel and like the video if you found it helpful so far. We're going to be doing all of these patch notes whenever they come out. We're going to go into a little bit of detail on each and every one of them, so might be good to stick around. Now on to the balancing changes. They're giving some more smithing stones because the regular smithing stone line costs so many smithing stones. They're finally increasing the drop rate for enemies to drop smithing stones, so that's pretty dope. Also, they're adding smithing stones to early game shops. Also very nice. Shields in general are going to be more effective. I know shields, especially the great shields, were pretty subpar in this game. I think they were a little bit cautious about buffing them up because of the guard counter mechanic. I wasn't sure how strong that was going to be. And I think they underdid it on shields. So bringing shields up a little bit, this is a good thing. Increase the damage for all offensive cracked pot items, so your consumable only run just got a little bit more viable. Let's go. Straight up buffs to a few items. Spark, Aromatic, and Poison Spray Mist got a damage buff. Uplifting Aromatic and Iron Jar Aromatic are getting an effect duration buff. Torrent now gets more HP whenever you feed him raisins, even though I've never seen a single person ever feed Torrent a raisin, and maybe that's why Torrent gets us killed so often whenever we're trying to joust. Reduce the FP consumption and increase the damage of the following sorceries. So magic builds are still getting buffed, and this is great in my opinion. Glintstone, Comet Shard, Comet, and Night Comet. They increased the damage on this, decreased the FP cost, making them a little bit more viable compared to some of the other later game spells. I like this change a lot. In a similar fashion, increase the damage of the following sorceries: Gravity Well, Collapsing Stars, and Crystal Barrage. I love the Crystal Barrage spell. I did feel like it was slightly undertuned. I'm really excited to go back and check this one out and see how it does. Gravity Well, on top of it having the movement that it pulls things towards you, I think a little bit of damage will make it a little bit more worthwhile, especially since it's kind of a slow cast. Decrease the FP consumption of the following sorceries: Star Shower, Rock Blaster, Gavel of Haima, Founding Rain of Stars, Stars of Ruin, Great Blade Phalanx, Magic Downpour, Loretta's Great Bow, Loretta's Mastery, Carrion Greatsword, Carrion Piercer, and Shard Spiral. The fact that they're decreasing the FP on all of these sorceries or buffing the damage, it makes me so happy. Magic builds are a lot of fun in this game, and there's a lot of situational spells, and this is just making it so that you have a wider range of spells to actually have and be viable outside of, oh yeah, this do big damage and costs not a lot, so I'm going to use it exclusively. With all of these spell slots that they give you, it's nice to actually feel like you can use all of them and still have viability. Last little sorcery buff: raise the projectile speed and range of Great Glintstone Shard. Was a little slow. I'm glad for this one. Nice little quality of life. And now we are getting into the nerfs. Not a lot of nerfs in this patch, but they do seem to be the outlier weapons of the game. At least some of the outlier weapons of the game. And I feel like the majority of these are warranted in some capacity. And for the speedrunning community, and for myself, because I was going to use this in my level 1 run, decreased Ash of War Hoarfrost Stomp's damage and increased the time to cast. This is a painful one, especially, like I said, for the speedrunning community. They were using the Hoarfrost Stomp for those speedruns on top of the Knight's Resolve buff. From what I've gathered from this, it is roughly half the damage, so the initial damage whenever the frost goes out is going to be the same type of damage whenever it shatters. It used to be whenever it shattered, it would do like 3 times the damage. Now it's just going to do like damage when it goes out and then roughly the same amount of damage when it shatters. The amount of frost that you still build up should be roughly the same. So if you do frostbite, you'll still get that nice little pop, but it's not going to be nearly as good just to spam this spell. Increased Ash of War Bloody Slash's self-inflicted damage while slightly lowering the damage and increasing the cast time. I don't know how to feel about this one. I felt like Bloody Slash was kind of slow to cast already. I don't know how slow it's going to be now. But with the amount of health pool that you do get in this game, I feel like increasing the amount of self-inflicted damage that it does probably wasn't a bad idea. And I'm glad they didn't neuter the damage too much like what they did with Hoarfrost Stomp. Decrease the weapon skill of Sword of Night and Flame. This one we all saw coming. This is definitely the outlier weapon of the game, the most broken weapon that the game came out with in vanilla. Your beam sword is not going to be able to melt bosses faster than Comet Azure can. From what I understand, the weapon's still very good, and if you properly put points into it, you're still going to get extremely high damage, but it's not going to be boss destroying right out of the gate just from hitting base stats like it used to be. Increase the FPS consumption and lower duration of Ash of War Barricade Shield. I feel like since they buffed shields in general, they wanted to bring this spell back down so that shields didn't become just blatantly overpowered. Changed the FP consumption timing of Ash of War Prelate's charge. I'm assuming this one was, the FP cost was kind of hitting a bit late and people were exploiting it there, so it's probably going to take your FP a little bit earlier when you were using it. And then the last one, pour one out for the homie. Decrease the damage of spirits summoned when using the item Mimic Tier Ash and change the spirit's behavior pattern. No longer will we have a spirit that can solo the game for us. I don't know how much the reduction on damage is from this or how they changed the AI's behavior, but our boyo was hyper aggressive and did exactly the same amount of damage as us, so RIP the Mimic Tier run. And yeah, that is the newest patch for Elden Ring. A lot of really good stuff, and I'm glad to see a good large chunk of buffs and bug fixes coming out of this game. Hopefully the stability of the game overall is improved on all platforms, and hopefully this is kind of the pattern that we see moving forward. Lots of buffs and maybe just some outlier nerfs moving forward, because nothing ruins the fun more than nerfing things that are fun. And I think they've done an appropriate job here, making it so that these things are still going to be fun without being what they deem game breaking. But let me know what you think down in the comments below of these patch notes. Are you excited about some of the changes coming up? Are you going to get that Arcane Blood build going now that Rivers of Blood is working as intended? Let me know. Subscribe to the channel if you are interested in more Elden Ring content. Like the video if you enjoyed it, dislike it if you dislike it. And without further ado, much love, Tenna Crew. Bye-bye.